Welcome back to CivilNet. I'm your host, Patrick Elliott. I'm delighted to be joined by the Honorable Judge Apkarian of the California Superior Court. Your Honor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So you also are one of the big locomotives at the Center for Truth and Justice. Tell us, since the last time that you were here, what are some of the recent moves that the Center for Truth and Justice has been working on or undertaking recently?
So I think we were talking earlier, the last time I was here was last September, which is the last time I was in Armenia during what I call during the fall of Artsakh, the forcible deportations. So what have we done since then is this. What we had to do was we hired into our Yerevan staff, all the staff from Artsakh, because we had staff in Artsakh. So we hired them in, and we got to work to try to document as fast as we could, but as thoroughly as we can and need to be, evidence of atrocities during the days of the bombings in Stepanakert in Artsakh, and then the harrowing, days and days and days on the road, and while passing through the Hagari bridge, what happened to these people, right? And the reason we had to get to work really fast is because everybody seems to think, there's 150,000 Armenians from Artsakh who are currently refugees. Okay, whether they have a refugee passport or not, doesn't matter. By legal definition, they are refugees. But a lot of them are subject to migration, which means they use Armenia as a hub from which they leave to go elsewhere. Because that's what happens to people who are forcibly moved out of their homes. This is what happened to the Armenians from Baku. This is what happened to the Armenians from Shahumyan. This is what happened to the Armenians from Syria. They come through Armenia, those that can find a way to find a living. And if they can't do it immediately, if they have family or relatives or friends elsewhere, they leave. And what happens is the evidence leaves with them. And this is a huge problem. So one of the things, we got to work really fast and hard, and it was a good thing that we tripled our staff because of the Artsakh staff that we took in. They knew where the Artsakhis were, right, where the evidence was. So we've now gathered close to 550 testimonial evidence of atrocities committed by Azerbaijan. So then the question becomes, okay, what do you do with all this?
That was my next question. Well, so given all this information that you've gathered, it seems like the Armenian government, which has been defeated in war, is now negotiating under duress. Let's be honest. We're negotiating at the edge. There's a barrel of a gun pointed at our heads. You've been to Jermuk, you know how close they are, and it seems like there's no mention of any of this. There's no desire to prosecute or to speak out for our refugees, our survivors. So what are the next steps with all this information? Do we need a green light from the Armenian government? Are we able to file from a grassroots perspective? Can Armenian organizations, can Armenian individuals, can these families file? What does it look like?
So, yes, there is a gun at their head, to their head. And because of that, what we did was, so soon after the fall of Artsakh, Armenia did become the most recent member of the International Criminal Court, okay? So what does that mean? We decided at the Center for Truth and Justice to file a communication to the ICC, because that's how you bring evidence to the ICC prosecutor's office in order for them to start what's known as a preliminary examination. That's how you start things moving at the ICC, okay? You need to file a communication, and then you hope that you're going to get a preliminary examination of that communication. Eventually, there would be actual investigation completed by the ICC, and you hope to get a warrant, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how it's a slow road, but it's a technical road. So in the meantime, what we realized was, and Prime Minister Pashinyan was the one who put the map up on TV or spoke about it in government of the 21 or 22 locations within the Republic of Armenia that Azerbaijan's military forces are currently in. right? And so we started taking a closer look at this, and because we started gathering evidence and testimonies of what's going on, and we decided to file a communication not focused on the deportations, but focused on Armenia itself. But it's a 100-page communication, and it's on our website. Anyone who's interested and loves to have a good read. It includes the atrocities from the 2020 war, the torture of the POWs, the arrest of the hostages, the blockade, the starvation, the bombing, and the ultimate forcible deportations, because that is the pattern that Azerbaijan is following in Armenia. They are in Armenia with their military forces, and the villages where they are around them, they have them at gunpoint. They have burnt the fields. They keep the farmers from using the water. They kill their cattle. Children cannot go home. Cannot go to school. It is the same thing that they've done in Artsakh, which is, it starts with intimidation, it starts with terror, and then it starts with weapons. And so we use that entire pattern to say what crimes are being committed actively in Armenia. So we filed our first communication. That's not our last communication. Those who are watching need to understand that thousands of communications get filed with the ICC, and the number of communications that actually go to preliminary examination are very far and few in between. But we didn't just file it because filing is a button. You push a button and it gets filed. We actually went to The Hague in April. We met with 7 or 8 embassies, state parties. So what I'm trying to say is that we are trying to push that ball. Now, if Armenia as a state party were to file a communication, it would get stronger attention, obviously. However, that does not mean that civil society cannot, or the work that it's done cannot be seen. So there's a lot of strategy ahead of us, a lot of work ahead of us. But I do want to touch upon this issue of, as a part of the peace negotiations, is the Armenian government walking away from all legal avenues? There's a difference between saying things and doing things. If they were walking away from all international legal avenues, then they would not be pursuing the case at the ICJ, right? At the International Court of Justice. Armenia has not withdrawn from that, from the CERD Convention, which is elimination of racial discrimination. That case is active. In fact, they finished hearings a couple months ago in April, and in the next 2 months, we expect the ICJ court, known as the World Court, to make its rulings regarding admissibility of evidence. That's what that's about. And based on that, the case will then go to the actual case in chief, okay? So the fact that the Armenian government hasn't withdrawn from the ICJ is an indicator that no, it has not stopped. However, regardless of what the government does, there are numerous cases being filed at the European Court of Human Rights by individuals through their lawyers against Azerbaijan. And there are numerous judgments against Azerbaijan. Okay, does that mean Azerbaijan is paying the judgments? No, but there are cases that are being won as we speak.
Yeah.
And there's more. I can go on.
Let's talk about the right of return. I mean, first of all, Azerbaijan is, on paper at least, a signatory to this. The people of Karabakh have the right to return. It's also something that we're not seeing that's being advocated for as part of the official peace negotiations from the Armenian government side of things. But what does that look like? Is this something that the Center for Truth and Justice is worried about, is focusing on, or, I mean, who's going to advocate for the homes and the properties and the lands that the people of Artsakh have lost?
So 2 separate things. The right of return is an absolute right. The European Union has said it, the United States has said it, the Armenian government has said it. In fact, I'm going to say this and people might not like it, Azerbaijan has said it. Azerbaijan has said, the Armenians want to come back to their homes? Sure, come on back. You just have to become an Azerbaijani citizen and live under our rules, like any of our citizens, okay? The right of return is an absolute right. However, As time goes on and we get further and further away from the forcible deportations, that right starts to dissipate. Yeah. Okay? Because I'll just give you an example. And the example is in the situation of Northern Cyprus, all right, in 1974. Those people had a right. But as time has gone on, cases are in court where the judges are saying, yes, you have an absolute right, but we cannot return those properties because since then those properties have been sold, demolished, rebuilt. Where does the right of return fit in with time going by? So your rights dissipate. So every single day that goes by, their right of return gets looser legally. Yeah. This is the legal side. The practical side of it is there are cases right now being brought on behalf of businesses from Artsakh at the European Court of Human Rights. I don't know what the result's going to be, but there are lawyers in Armenia, I can even give you their names, who are filing these cases, not one, not two, but they expect to file them in the hundreds. So people of Artsakh do have the right to make claims against their properties. Eventually, there's a lot of conversation, and we are involved in this, is whether or not there should be some form of reparations commission, some form of truth commissions. These are all alternatives. They're basically complementary to some form of restitution, right? But the idea that to advocate for the right of return has to be done this way. We have to advocate for the right of the return in order to use that for the security of Armenia. So it's a political tool at this point. It's not a practical tool. It's not a legal tool because let's face it, I just explained the complications of them going back. Where are they going back to, right? So you have to use the right of return in order to gain security for Armenia.
Can we get, for example, the famous current situation that we're living in, where South Africa was the one who actually filed a case against Israel and Netanyahu? Can we get, for example, a friendly country to advocate for us? I mean, I don't know, maybe a country that starts with F and ends with rants or something. Some of our, friendlier states who can take up the mantle if the Armenian government can then have that plausible deniability. We're negotiating, it's not us, but hey, the French are pushing.
Well, what are you talking about? Are you talking about in the terms, ICC is the only place, are you talking about the ICC? Is that a plausible argument? Of course, why is it that CFTJ went to The Hague, we took a victim with us, we filed a document, we had a press conference, and we met with 8 different embassies. I mean, and they didn't include France, but, oh, no, I'm sorry, I did meet with France as well, sorry. But the point of it is, yes, there are other friendly countries, it needs work. As an NGO, as a civil society organization, we're not the foreign ministry. There's a difference, right? Yeah. So, and one of the reasons, can it be done? Yes. Is it the right avenue? It's an avenue. There are many avenues. And the ICC is not the beginning and the end of what we seek in form of justice. One of the reasons people say to me things like, well, if Armenia wasn't going to file at the ICC, why did it join? Why did it join? I can give you 50 different reasons why it was the right thing to do. A part of the ICC is the prevention aspect. So you have 150, I don't know how many, 123 state parties who are signatories to the ICC. And a part of their responsibility is the prevention of any type of aggressive war, atrocities, or genocide. So don't you want that support, that prevention aspect as well? So just by joining, you've strengthened your position. And the other thing I want to say is that the ICC is a place where a person might get punished. A person. You can't punish a country. You can't punish a government. And the ICC will not stop bombs and drones from falling on our heads. The ICC is a criminal court. It's a prosecution of a potential criminal. So it's after the fact.
Yeah. We have, of course, COP29 in Baku that's coming up. Can you tell us some of the Center for Truth and Justice's activities around this greenwashing of atrocities that's about to take place next door?
It's happening already. All right. I mean, the day they got COP29, they started their campaign. They're very good at it. Azerbaijan is not a country to be underestimated of how they buy information and how they twist information. They're very good at it. I mean, they're not the only ones. It's happening all over the world. It's a political tool. We've done several things that we continue to do. One of the things we did was write to the Azerbaijani COP29 members and say, you're going to have the whole world showing up at your doorsteps. Perhaps, you should do the right thing in pursuit of, climate change is about justice. Climate issues is about justice. Justice is not just what takes place in court or in a jail, but the whole issue of how to deal with climate and the consequences of climate change is about justice, because society is ultimately that's going to suffer. So we use the opportunity to reach out to them and sort of shame them in a diplomatic way, but because they have to hear from us. They have to. We can't be screaming into the cloud via social media at no audience. You have to target who you're speaking to, right? And then we wrote to the leadership of COP29 in general and pointed out, this is what's going on. They already know, because there's so many journalists that have been arrested and dissidents, but we wanted to make sure that they hear about the hostages that are sitting in the dungeons of Baku. And we are running a campaign. We don't have any... We want to use COP29 to educate those who are coming to Azerbaijan about the truth. That's why we call Truth and Justice. We don't have any illusions about the fact that we're going to be able to secure the release of the hostages right before COP29. That's just too romantic. It just doesn't work that way. The release of the hostages is going to be a political decision, and it's going to be negotiated between countries. There might be intermediary countries. There have been other intermediary countries in the past. So as an organization, it's what we do. We amplify the voices of those that are not heard. We amplify the voices of the victims. So that's an ongoing challenge. Even after COP29, we are going to continue working on the issue of the hostages. I'll give you an example. This is the first time we're doing this. In fact, tonight, 4 victims, 3 from Artsakh, 1 from Armenia, are flying to Washington, D.C. with our staff. The U.S. government was very generous in expediting their visas. They are going to be in Washington, D.C. this coming week in order to meet with members of Congress and Senate. It's the Advocacy Week, in order to be present at the Lantos Commission, where they're going to be spoken about the atrocities that they've had to carry on their own skins. And this is what needs to happen. These victims need to be heard. There are people there that are related to some of the hostages who are going to also be there. This is a very, I don't want to give names. It's the very first time this is happening. The work doesn't stop until you get what you want. But you have to be creative, and you have to be strategic, and you can't be romantic about it. So sometimes we deliver bad news. Artsakhtsis say to me, they call me Judge John. They say, Judge John, do you think, can we go back? And I go, let me ask you this. Do you think you can go back? They go, no. I go, it's practically speaking, they can't go back.
I wish we can end on a brighter note, but I hope our next one will be more celebratory of a couple wins.
I'm going to say this. There are many things to actually appreciate. I'm going to say this, okay? Unlike 1915, the Artsakh Armenians have a homeland to come to. Okay? That's a huge thing. My grandparents did not have that. 1. 2, there are no bombs falling on our heads. Okay? Every single day that Armenia is safe from war is something to be celebrated. Is it hard to live under the threat of war? Of course it is. But does that mean that Palestinians should have given up? Does that mean Ukrainians should be giving up? And I can go on and go on and go on. This is the corner of the world that's been given to us, but we've been given independence and sovereignty. That's a lot to celebrate. And that's a lot that we have to work. That's what we work for. Center for Truth and Justice is about holding on to what is Armenia and Armenian. Because I did not grow up in an Armenia. This is a gift to me. And I have to do everything I can to hold on to it. So every day that our borders are quiet and an Armenian soldier is not dying at the hands of Azerbaijani military, that's a day to celebrate. Because that gives, the longer peace we have, the stronger we'll get. So we need peace.
There's a book I was reading about a British POW during the first Iraq War, special forces guy, and he was tortured by Saddam in a prison. And they asked him, how did you keep going? And he said, it's quite simple. I just kept remembering, still breathing, still winning, still breathing, still winning. And we're still breathing, and they don't want us to do that. So as far as I'm concerned, we're still winning.
And we're going to keep breathing, and we're going to be around. People say these are hard times. I don't remember when it wasn't hard. I lived in Armenia between 1992 and 1994 during those dark years. Armenia was under a blockade. We're still under an energy blockade. All right? I mean, it's not, who said having sovereignty and independent country is easy? Who has it easy? I have no idea. But we carry our burdens on a daily basis, and we stop seeing the positive side. We look at this horror. We've lost Artsakh. We have a right of return. Who's doing this for us? By the way, no one's going to do anything for us, which is what Center for Truth and Justice is. Which is why we just finished our 3-day conference. It's our third conference, which is why we brought 45 international experts from the ICC, former judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys from all over the world, from Cyprus, from Germany, from the US, from Canada, from Greece. These are the experts. You know why? They're about to leave Armenia, and they're going to carry our message out. And they're all saying to us, we'll work for Armenia and Artsakh. Because they met the victims, they heard the stories, they heard the truth. So we can't do this alone. We need friends. But yeah, it's hard work, and we just have to keep doing it.
Well, it looks like we did it on a good note after all. Your Honor, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again for watching ＳիվիլNet.